Uncle Rami, did you do something to the table? Listen, I'm not gonna lie, my eye for this stuff isn't too bad. You know, it's not too bad. I will say though, this wasn't really my doing. It was, my guy wanted to do something nice for me. He likes me a lot. They're family. They're basically my Turkish family, honestly. Let me grab a couple other necessities. All right, yep, I came in with a shirt, honestly, because it's not that warm out. Last time, I purposely didn't have a shirt because it was sunny and I wanted to get some sun. I'm kind of just hanging. I always feel weird about that, to be honest with you. In my head, it's like, is that like inappropriate? Put a shirt on for God's sakes, But it's also one of those things where, there's channels about it just being as I am. And so I try to do that as much as possible, but there's also elements of, you know, respect that you want to continuously display. Yes, it's nicotine gum. Nicotine and caffeine equals protein, in the words of John Daly. I mean, my gosh. Oh. And by the way, that's not a plug for you guys, but like, oh, I need to start doing that. It actually goes perfectly with today's video. In that moving out at 18 is possibly one of the most damaging psyops that's been fed to young men. And I get why people say it, don't get me wrong, because it's the idea that, hey, listen, you have to take care of yourself, you have to be self-sufficient, you can't be dependent on anybody, you should only be relying on yourself. I get all of those. But what it breaches and what it preaches specifically is isolation. There's a time and place where, of course, isolation is necessary. I'm telling you this from coming from someone that naturally enjoys isolation, more so than hanging around people most of the time. And I mean that. It's a very, very difficult thing to weigh in and weigh out. But to keep it on topic, it's the idea that you're using blanket statements and thinking of things as a checklist for you to become the man you want to be. This is the biggest problem I see because everybody's bag of problems is their own. This is the truth of it. And for you to look externally outside of yourself for answers that may not fit your situation, there's no discernment of, is this actually applied to me? But the people that are genuinely terrified of moving outside of their house because they're not sure if they can do it, there's probably something there in a good way. That means there's something, you want to know something? I probably should be kind of, I should be thinking this way. Like, why is it that I'm terrified of being out on my own? You don't even have to answer those questions, but fear is a great compass. I personally use fear as a compass myself. At a certain point, like anything else, if you overuse it, like any skill, any of your strengths, if you overuse it or misuse it, it can come back to bite you in the ass. It's the truth of it. But the biggest problem I see is there's some people that should be dipping out of the house at 18, 19, 20. Point is there's a time and place for it. But what I'm gonna explain to you, and I'll go into a little bit of a story time for me and kind of something I don't like doing, to be honest with you. I don't like sharing so much about myself. I've always been that way since I've been young. It's not that, oh, I don't want anyone to know because I'm a private dude, but genuinely I am very private. I've always been that way. I don't like talking about myself very often, to be honest with you. I like talking about what I'm doing. I like talking about ideas, but about me specifically and myself, unless it's relating to the person I'm talking to, it's extremely difficult for me to do. That's why these videos, I can share stories because there's context. I'm not talking to myself or about myself for myself. I'm doing it in my head. It's like, well, if you hear a story about it, like anything else, story times is an extremely easy way of grabbing lessons to understand a full story. And so what I'll tell you is, through high school, this is after my grandfather passed. I kind of became a recluse. There wasn't a lot of people I like to hang out with, but I've always been that way. I like who I like and I don't like who I don't like. And when I say don't like, it doesn't mean I despise them. There's just some people my heart either opens up to or it doesn't. But I've always had that thing where it's like, if my heart opens up to you, I personally look at it now at this point in my life. It took me a long time to get here. And I wish I would have learned this sooner, but that's God talking to you. That's God. I believe instinct is God's way of speaking to you. So when your instincts are telling you something, you should follow through with them. I just trust I know God's telling me, hey, listen, this person's not meant for you in your life. When your heart opens up to someone, this person is meant for you in your life at this point in time. Things change, things happen. This is where people are looking for, and to be honest with you, I think it's possibly the school system that makes people think this way. I think that's where I struggled a ton. I just thought in my head the answer is either right or it's wrong. And right and wrong is truthfully dependent on the person. I'm not talking about morality. I'm talking about decisions for your life to get you to where you want to go. And that's why people move out at 18, is because they think it's this thing. It's like, okay, if I move out at 18, then I'm going to have everything I've ever wanted because this guy told me moving out at 18 will turn me into a man, and I desperately want to be a man. But I don't know how to do it. But this guy kind of looks like a man, you know, like he's macho and stuff. Honestly, he's better than anybody else in my life, so I might as well listen to him. And that's where you have to have patience. When you feel it in your gut, when you need to make a move, that can be outside of your house in the context of this conversation, or just in general, you know, quitting a job, deciding to go all in on a business. It doesn't even have to be that way. It can be quitting your business and going into a job. Everyone's life looks a little bit different. But you need to be extremely careful of using blanket statements that people say to the masses for your situation and of trying to apply that. There are certain things that I believe are principled no matter what. Those are the things I like to preach. They're things that you're always going to be proud of yourself for, like never making a decision out of weakness, right? It's something I've preached a ton here. And never making a decision out of weakness is how I've been able to get here. And then the first basically 99% of my life was me making decisions from weakness. And my life looked absolutely awful. This is somebody that on paper has all the tools, has all the talent, has the ability, has done good things, but just for some reason it just doesn't click. And so, like I mentioned kind of earlier, to kind of carry it through for story time, my grandfather passed and it messed me up, the big time. You know, he's very much a father figure. I was 14 years old at the time he passed. And my family didn't know how to deal with it. So in my head, I was like, I'll be the fun guy and I'll make sure everyone's smiling when they're around me to make everybody forget what happened. Through that, I just didn't really care to hang around people, but a few people, and those are my dogs, you know. And then I get into college, and I'm at this point, it was actually senior year of high school, and I started realizing in my head, I'm like, I don't have anything that I want. I'm terrified of everything. I used to have a ton of fear, and it's so funny. The people that I realized that look like the bravest or probably people that dealt with fear on a visceral level and got over it. It's usually how it works. You know, the most courageous people are typically the people that have dealt with the most amount of fear. And I used to think there was something wrong with me. But long story short, to kind of speed it up because I want to get to this point. So it was like senior year of high school, I started kind of going against the grain on stuff. Everything that I was terrified of, I did. And that kind of took on a world of its own, not in a good way. But I got to a point where I started just doing whatever in my head was like, what do I need to do? Because I hate the person I am right now and I hate my life circumstances, so I need to change it up. And so I basically made all decisions on the opposite end of the spectrum. And it was just because I was trying to find my self-respect. And as funny as it sounds, that's where it's like the irony of life, but I did a lot of things that didn't deserve respect. You know, I almost did things that were the opposite of that. And then there came a time where I actually thought about it, and I'll never forget it. I had a ticket booked out, and I was just going to dip from the crib. And it's because, like, you know, riff with parents and stuff. The way I'm trying to live my life is, you know, not under the code of standard, you know, that my parents care for me to abide by. And I was just going to do it because I wasn't scared about, oh, how am I going to fend for myself? And it was really funny. I realized at that point, I'm like, you're making this decision out of weakness because you can't handle what's happening inside your own home. You know, it's easier for you to leave and basically do whatever than it would be to stay here. So in a funny way, me moving out at that time would have been the easy way out. Now, I think that would have had its own benefits. But moving forward from that, you know, there's a lot of things. You guys can go back through. I don't want to make this a ridiculously long story time. But there came a point in my life where I touched rock bottom on stuff. And I realized, I'm like, this is not the life I want to live. You know, I'm working a good job. No, prior to then, I didn't have a job, nothing. I was kind of just like a loser. When I say a loser, it's not like, you know, geek. It was the opposite. Cool under the spectrum of like, oh yeah, dude, like, look, he does X, Y. It's just, it was all fake. It was all fucking fake. And it was just me desperately trying to find something that would work. Until I touched rock bottom, and I had so much shame for just like what I became. You know, it's not like I was a bad person ever. Never was a bad person. But just in terms of God gave you these talents and what have you done with them? You've done nothing. You have nothing to show for it. What else you got? You know? But later on, still at the house, by the way, I stayed at the house till I was like older. And this is why I'm explaining this, because most people think if I'm at the house at 25, people are going to look at me like a loser. And that's why they make those decisions to leave the nest early. It's because you want to be seen by other people who really don't give a fuck about you. But I knew in my head the easy way out would have been to leave easily. I worked a job where I was on the road basically 5-6 days a week. So I mean, I was living out of hotel rooms for a while. But at that point, I come back to the house, and it got to a point where I got in this pretty bad car accident. And so I had a bad concussion, so I wasn't allowed to drive technically. And so I had to do a lot of my work from the house. At that point, I almost felt like my bandwidth kind of opened up. And at any of this point, I could have easily left the house and moved. And I was considering it at that time. But I realized in my head, if I were to move, it was because I didn't want to deal with the ghost of being in a place where everyone has known me from the beginning. And I think this is what I see amongst people that leave the hometown. And it's because it's so difficult to break from the shackles that people have put onto you. The friends you used to hang out with that expect you to hang out. Your family that expects you to be a certain way. Your family that expects you to kind of do things, you know, in a certain regard. And to be able to beat to your own drum, despite all of the noise and all of the tension you have to live through day by day, that's going to garner more character for me in this specific situation than me leaving and ignoring and then re-injecting myself back in to show everyone, look what a success I am. In my life, I'm going to become a success no matter what. And by the way, success is under my standard. I ain't there yet. Maybe by a lot of people's standards, dude, what do you mean? Of course you're successful. Not under my standard. I'm not. And that's the point, is you have to beat to your own drum. Despite what anybody else thinks, despite what anyone else's opinions are. That's what being a man is. I don't care what you think in terms of what you think is best for my life, because I know what's best for my life. And I know if I could do it in the hometown with everybody that's ever known me, all of my flaws, everything that I've ever done, if I could do it despite all of that and shatter some of the old roots that have clung on to me my entire life, with it all happening. And that's how it works. It's like a rubber band. And it starts to really, you guys know this, as the rubber band goes further and further, the more tension there is, the more difficult it is to move, and then eventually it snaps. And it'll probably hit your finger and it'll probably hurt a little bit. But that's how tough it is. That's why most people can't do it in the hometown. But I told myself, if I can do it in the hometown, despite all of that, all the tension, everyone holding on and trying to just pull you back. They're actively trying to pull you back. If I can do it despite all of that, what kind of character can I be once I take care of all of the ghosts, everything that's had power over me in my life? If I can take care of that while everyone's looking at me like, look how old he is and he's still at the house. All of it. I've got everybody booing me in the stadium, cheering genuinely probably for me not to succeed. And these are people that I love, had incredible relationships with, people that genuinely probably wanted the best for me, but people don't know how to deal with insecurity. So in their way, they're like, fuck this guy, right? And me, despite all of that, I'm sticking to my guns and I'm going to make it happen here, and I ain't running. I'm not running from nobody. I'm going to do it here, because by the time I take care of everything I need to here in the hometown that has known me since I've been a kid and break it all, by the time I get to a place like this, I have no shackles. I have no what ifs in my brain. I refuse to live in the what ifs. Refuse. I'll never do it. I left the house at 28 years of age through all of this. I purposely stayed until I was like, oh, like I've defeated everything. And keep in mind, like, I'm not like at the house like, hey mom, what you got from, you know what I mean? Like, I'm making sure we're hanging out. I'm hanging out with my brothers. Take it a step further. At that time, my brothers in my relationship and one of my brothers was living basically down the street, and my other brother, lives a little bit far away. But we didn't have the greatest relationship for a little bit. We had a bit of a rocky one. And for me, I wanted to also stay in the hometown to regarner that before I left. I didn't want anything shattered. I wanted me to leave at the point where it hurt my brother and I for us to have to leave one another. where it hurt to have to leave and say bye to my parents. My grandmother who passed away. Another reason why I wanted to stay. She was sick. I could have left, of course, and came back to visit. But those times I got to spend with her, she fell, long story short, she fell, and it was kind of a downhill turn from there. But I did physical therapy with her. I'd go inside, and basically every single day I was seeing her for months. And we do physical therapy on her, and it was some of the best moments I'll ever have in my life. Quality moments with my grandmother before she passed, because that was my grandfather, the one that passed away that I talked about from earlier. He specifically, when he passed, it hurt because he never got to see me now. That hurts. That's something I'll never get in my life. You'll never be able to see this version of me. And it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it, right? Hurts more than anything. But what are you going to do? This is life. I have my own bag of problems. And that's why when I had the opportunity to be with my grandmother till her last dying breath, holding her hand, I'll remember that till I die, because guess what? We got one shot at this life, and it goes by fast. I refuse to make a decision because this random 4-piece chicken McNobody has an opinion on my situation. I refuse. I beat to my own drum because I know in my head I have lived life trying to adopt other people's models. And that's what this page is for. It's meant to garner and learn and basically teach you how to find your own model by using tools in your arsenal, using anger properly, using heartbreak properly. I could have easily left early. I think about that. I could have easily left early, but there was a gut instinct of mine that said, if you leave, you're running, you're hiding. By leaving the nest early, you're hiding. And I knew that, and that won't make sense to a lot of people, but I knew it, and I'm right. Because everything I have at this point in my life, I wouldn't change for anything in the world. Would literally, not for any amount of money in the world, switch spots with anybody. You know how many people can say that? Genuinely? Nobody. And I got to rekindle my relationship with my brother to the point where we both laughed, and it was rough. It was rough. It's like, man, I'm leaving my dog, man. And my other brother, having to leave him because he just got back to the States. He was overseas, for work. Having to leave them, having to leave my family, it hurt. But you want to know something? That's why I did it the way I did it, because it wouldn't have hurt like that before. I had nothing holding me back. Everyone asked me, why did you leave the United States? Because I did everything I needed to in the hometown. Anything that had even an ounce of power over me, I submitted it. Despite it all, starting from nothing with the page, with $0, I got to tell that story sometime, but started with $0 and just started posting. You know how I arrived at posting content online? Instagram, I think we have over, 275,000 followers. This is, by the way, in less than 2 years. On YouTube, I think at this point I'm at like 25,000 subs, and I've been posting for about 10 months. It shows I think I have like 1,000 videos, but those are all from shorts and stuff. I was just doing it because it's like I already made the piece of content, might as well post it. But I haven't been doing this for very long. And it was because I legitimately, in my head, was like, how can you best help people based on who you are today, being as resourceful as possible? So I want you to think about that. Some 26, 27-year-old dude living in his parents' house, posting pieces of fitness content online. How do you think that looks to everybody else? And this, by the way, prior to this, I had a job that basically guaranteed me an executive role in a company that was $1 billion corporation. I was set for life. Set for life. They treated me, I had the quickest promotion in company history. They basically made it clear over and over again, this is what we plan to do with you. We're going to fast track you to become an executive. And I still said no. Obviously, like for a little bit, I was working the job, and then finally I just realized, I'm like, this isn't what I want. Because I refused to make a decision out of weakness. That's the entire thesis of this. Think about how hard it would be for probably most people to be looked at as a 26-year-old man still living with his parents. And what? You're posting fitness content online? I could have easily left and done that. I would have been fine. I'll always figure it out. Never had once, I swear to you, I never had the fear of, how am I going to make ends meet? You just make ends meet. I've always been that guy where it's like, I'll figure it out. I don't worry about that. But in my head, am I making the decision because in my head it's easier to run? And that's the problem with adopting the model of isolation. Like, I'm just going to leave everybody and I'm going to do my thing. It's not an issue. I think it's actually probably better for most people. But you understand why I did it. Because I would have looked at it as hiding. Because if I can do everything I can with all of the tension and all the noise and all the distractions and everyone telling me negative things, I'm impervious to negativity. What are you gonna do? You could quite literally say what you want all day long. It ain't changing how I'm coming in every single day. It's difficult. It's extremely hard. You have to overcompensate for all of that. But what happens the moment I basically put all of those to rest and now I'm in a new place and now I've decided to inject myself in a new arena? There's nothing holding me back. Do you understand how light I feel every single day I wake up? Because nothing has power over me. Nothing. Where everything used to have power over me. Everyone's words, everyone's opinions, everyone's thoughts. To the point where I never could even hear my own voice. And for that, I'm so thankful that some kid who didn't really know, because you don't know till anything happens, but I took a risk. I took a humongous risk on myself to say, you want to know something? I'm going to come out on top based on my life. It's not about on top of anybody else. For me, nobody else. Because I have to live life in this body. I live life in first person, not from third, which is how everybody else is operating. That's why you think you need to leave at 18 to become a man, is because you're operating in third person. You're analyzing yourself from someone else's perspective versus just living in your perspective, telling yourself the extremely uncomfortable hard truths and moving with those based on those hard truths. Because I can tell you right now, there's not a damn thing anybody can do to stop me from getting to exactly where I plan to get. And it ain't gonna happen on accident. I got God, I got my family, and I got nothing holding me back. And if I want something, I'll get it. But I got nothing looming in the background besides regret in my life where it's like, man, I really wish I would have gotten to this point earlier. But that's life. That's why I'm able to wake up and feel gratitude, is because I have those regrets. That's why when people talk about, I want to give my regrets for anything, they don't know how to verbalize it. But that's why. Because I get to wake up with gratitude. I wouldn't have the level of gratitude and thankfulness I have to get up and get after every single day. The rent is due every single day, but it's not a bad thing. People look at that as like, I gotta do it again. It's like, I get to do this, dude. You know what life was like before I didn't have a mission? Aimless. Aimless, dude. To wake up and at least, even if it's hard, and it is, dude, it's so hard to wake up and give everything you got every single day. But it's a hard I'll take 10 out of 10 times versus the other hard where I'm just looking aimlessly in the dark. That's why you need to go through it all. That's why you're trying to circumvent the process, even if you got there on paper and you hit your checklist and everything that you wanted to happen, you'd still feel empty, partially. It's the climb, it's the adversity that when you get through, you're like, man, I bled for this shit. I bled for it. And that's why moving out at 18 isn't a one-size-fits-all rule. It's not a mass prescription for everybody. You need to start taking what works for you that you innately trust, despite how it looks to the outside world. That's being a man. That's the rite of passage that you're looking for. And that's how you waver conviction, because if everyone else is on your side when you do something, that's not real conviction. It's easier. When everyone's against you and what you're doing and no one thinks that what you're doing is the right move to make, it's game over. That's how you become the man you want to be. Anyways, I appreciate watching this video. I hope this is well worth your time. Hold on, let me make sure this thing's still going. Oh yeah, I was worried because I'm kind of on low storage, even though I got, I think, like 1 terabyte, but life of a content creator, you know. But anyways, I appreciate watching this video, especially if you made it till the end. Coffee Talks with Uncle Ram, dude. Come on. Dude, think about it, just a bunch of crusaders sitting around the round table. That's what I can't wait for. There'll be a time where that happens, where all of us, we're talking about the council. The council will be on the table talking, cooking up angles. Not on content, just in terms of what we're going to do with Crusadia, coming to you on June 22nd. Beyond excited. It's going to absolutely take over everything. It's going to be the way people are meant to be doing business. You know, a lot of people tell me like, hey, like, why aren't you doing this? Like, you should be pushing way more product. First off, I do just fine. Secondly, I'm not here to tell people this is going to be the thing that changes your life, but that's what Crusadia aims to do. And it's tough for me to say that, you know, even if I put together programs that are the best programs on earth, and I really gave everything I got inside the program, where it's like, if I were taking someone, I wasn't allowed to talk with them, my life depended on it, I had to get them in shape in 6 months, how would I write out this program? That's how I write out every single one. I give everything. But I'm also understanding of how people are, and giving them all the answers isn't actually what moves the needle, funny enough. And so it's just basically learning a way of really giving a product that actually will change people's lives. We're talking about people that are going to really make it up high in the world. And that's what I plan to do with a lot of people with raw talent and ability, and to harness that all into one place. So I'm really excited for that. But anyways, I love you guys. Another coffee talk down the hatch from Uncle Rami to the Natural Crusaders, my online family, man. Hopefully it becomes like basically my real family, you know? Be kind of cool. But anyways, I love you guys. Uncle Rami out. Peace.